All right, hi everyone. Just getting myself set up there. It's Jimmy Nguyen. How's everybody doing? I'm president of Bitcoin Association. I want to welcome you to our first of what we're going to start as regional virtual meetups. We know because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's hard to do in-person events anymore. We're going to hope to get back to that in the coming months and next year. But for the meantime, we're launching virtual meetups so that people from around the world in different time zones can get together and hear all about things going on in the Bitcoin SV ecosystem. So joining me today is the technical director of the Bitcoin SV node project, Steve Shadders. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, everyone.
He's home in the London area. I just arrived in New York City last night in advance of the CoinGeek Live conference, which I'll give you a quick preview about. But this meetup is going to be focused on giving the opportunity for two of the projects that were shortlisted for our third BSV Hackathon and announced recently as semifinalists, giving them an opportunity to present their projects to the BSV community and get some exposure for them. So we'll be presenting or hearing presentations from two different of the shortlisted projects, which is MyPayMailSend and ProfitSilo. Before we get to that, I wanted to give you just a quick preview of what's coming up at CoinGeek Live. That's the second of our big Bitcoin SV business conferences this year, to follow on from the February conference, CoinGeek London, which was super successful. We had almost 1,000 people attend in person there and a live stream audience over the 2 days of about 30,000 people. A lot is going to be happening at CoinGeek Live. We, of course, had to convert it to a hybrid live and virtual event. We'll be broadcasting from two main studio sites, one in New York City here, where I will be, as well as a second site in London, where a lot of our speakers from the Europe region will be able to go speak from that site. So it's a 3-day event, September 30th, October 1st and 2nd. It's free to register. If you haven't already done so, register at coingeekconference.com. That's coingeekconference.com. And let me just give you a preview of some of the things that are going to happen just on day one of the conference. On day one, we've got all of the days are pretty full, especially day two. The day one is going to be having presentations with me starting, and then you'll hear from Steve talking about some of the fascinating technical progress that he and the infrastructure team have made to help the entire Bitcoin SV ecosystem. We'll get a presentation about experiential reality, AR and VR on Bitcoin SV or using Bitcoin SV. There'll be a panel with a lot of the great payments companies in the space, from AnyPay, a new entrant Zumo, as well as Chenti from Switzerland, which is developing a point of sale system to make it really easy for merchants to accept BSV payments. We'll get some discussion about the important topic of security and custody of services and how that can be advanced in the Bitcoin SV ecosystem, a panel about banking and financial products, including representatives from the Swiss National Bank, and a regulation panel with representatives from the European Commission will be participating from that, as well as a former executive from the United States Department of Treasury. So we've got some great government and former government leaders joining us. The day will move into the afternoon, where the finals of the hackathon will happen. The top 3 projects selected by the preliminary judging panel led by Steve will get the opportunity to present to the entire conference audience. And then there will be a panel of judges, including Craig Wright, Steve Shadders, and the famed George Gilder. We are happy to announce will be one of the final hackathon judges. You heard him speak at the last CoinGeek conference. He's a famed economist, best-selling author of the books Life After Google, The Scandal of Money, and many more, and is a big believer now in what we call the Satoshi vision for Bitcoin. He'll both be speaking at the conference on the final day with a keynote and a fireside chat with Craig and me, but he's been so wonderful that he's offered to also be a judge for the hackathon finals. You, if you're a member of the conference audience, will get to participate in the final voting. We will have an opportunity for everyone who's registered for the conference and watching the hackathon finals to cast your vote as part of an audience vote that contributes to determining the final winner. And this time the audience vote will be very unique. We'll explain it on the first day of the conference, but it will involve something related to an augmented reality experience. So don't miss out on that, and definitely sign up for the conference to participate. And then the conference will end that day with a keynote speech from Craig Wright about something he's talked to me and others at nChain about for some time, but we'll be discussing publicly for the first time at this conference, which is his thoughts on how the Bitcoin network can be used to power new forms of outsourced computation. So outsourced computation on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. He thinks it's coming, and we think you'll be excited to hear about it. So there's a ton happening on day one. And the final thing I'll say about the conference is on day two, which is Thursday, October 2nd, relative to the APAC region audience, we're starting the conference very, very early that day in New York Eastern Standard Time Zone. So instead of starting at 9 a.m. in New York, we're starting at 7 a.m., very early for the New Yorkers, but good for the Europe audience, and still in the evening for the APAC region. So for those of you in Asia Pacific, you'll at least be able to get to see some of the conference more in real time if you want to watch that evening. So it'll start at 7 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday, October 1st. And there'll be a few presentations from people in Australia and others in the region. So we can't wait to have you listen to the Australian team behind MetaStream, the high throughput wallet, which we'll be presenting that day, as well as Jeff Chen from Maxon, the CEO, talking about his vision and progress on a Bitcoin SV powered internet browser, as well as new domain system. So we thought we'd give you a bit of a time block that would be more convenient for the Asia Pacific audience. With that, that's all my announcements about CoinGeek Live. Once again, please register at CoinGeekConference.com, CoinGeekConference.com. Now I'm going to turn it over to Steve Shadders, who's going to give you his thoughts about a couple of things. One, the hackathon and his impressions of the hackathon generally, and he'll guide you through the two presentations you'll see today from shortlisted hackathon projects. But yesterday was a big day for Bitcoin SV infrastructure progress. The Bitcoin SV node team released publicly two things yesterday: version 1.0.5 of the Bitcoin SV node software with some significant improvements that will help scaling and lead, as Steve wrote, to a future of nano services, not just micropayments and microservices, nano services. And then also a next version of the formerly called Merchant API, now called MAPI, which is very useful for connecting high volume transaction generating applications to the mining pools and mining groups out there. So I'll turn it over to Steve to talk about those things.
Thank you, Jimmy. Before I get to the hackathon, I'll take a moment to talk about those releases. What you saw yesterday, the release of two products simultaneously, is something that you're probably going to see more of in the future from the Bitcoin SV infrastructure program. In fact, the next one will be three individual products released simultaneously. And I think it's fair to say that this is almost the beginning of the terranodization of Bitcoin, because whilst these products look like they're separate, they're actually designed to work together and interoperate. So the separation of functionality outside of a monolithic piece of software is a very important step for us. I think there's a number of features in both of those releases, some of which have addressed in a fair bit of detail with articles, etc., and some that are yet to be explained more thoroughly. There'll be more material coming out to talk about those, but a part of this event today is going to be Q&A, both for the hackathon entrants that are presenting, but also if anyone has any particular questions about those, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll have a crack at answering them at the end. So on to the hackathon. And why do we do hackathons? I mean, hackathons are really about building the developer community. In the same way that that older industries had their kind of foundational professions. You know, in the past, construction was founded on the work of architects and masons, and of course those industries specialize further and further in the future. the Bitcoin economy is a technology-based economy, and its foundational components are the developers. So the growth of that community of developers and the growth of their capability in terms of working with Bitcoin is one of the Bitcoin Association's primary missions. This is the third hackathon that we've done, and we changed up the format this time quite dramatically. We moved from a 48-hour Red Bull fueled frenzy to a more considered 8-week-long development cycle. And that's changed the nature of the hackathon somewhat, and it certainly produced some really interesting results. So the theme for this this version of the hackathon was connecting the world to one global blockchain, and it's one of the distinguishing characteristics of Bitcoin SV blockchain is because of its ability to scale in an unbounded fashion. It has the capability of acting as a global hub and as a global backbone to support interoperability. And this is a really important word, I think, in the Bitcoin space. In fact, the recently formed Technical Standards Committee features the word interoperability in its mission statement as one of its primary purposes. So entrants in this hackathon were asked to leverage this unifying capability of Bitcoin as a core element of their project, and we saw people address this this requirement in a lot of interesting and creative ways, plenty of ways I didn't anticipate myself, which is one of the things I love about these events. But it addressed global connectivity in another interesting way, in terms of the people that actually got involved this time. In total, 418 people joined this hackathon, and many of them were people who hadn't previously been involved in Bitcoin SV. So they had a very steep learning curve. Fortunately, they had a solid 8 weeks to go through it, but we saw some really impressive results. We saw some entries that may not stand out on the surface when you just look at them kind of side by side with others, but in some of those cases it's very clear that this is someone brand new to Bitcoin SV who had to learn from scratch, and the level of progress that we've seen across many of these entries was really impressive. Very diverse as well, 75 different countries represented, and in total we ended up with 42 projects submitted for judging, which kept the judging panel pretty busy for a couple of weeks. So the judging was, as always, but probably even more so this time, was really hard. Picking 3 out of that set was a real challenge for us. And so we ended up with a set of highly commended additional entries, and we really wanted a chance to be able to showcase some of these. And you know, many of them are in this I guess commended semi-finalist category for different reasons, and hopefully you'll be able to spot why. So as I said before, there'll be Q&A during the specific presentations. You can drop questions in the chat, and I'll relay some of those afterwards. And additionally, at the end, we'll have one more Q&A session, which could be about either the projects themselves or the Bitcoin SV node releases, or anything really, generic Bitcoin stuff. So to begin with, a really interesting entry by the name of MyPayMailSend, which addresses the case of being able to send Bitcoin to somebody who doesn't have a Bitcoin wallet, which is an incredibly powerful concept if it can be solved. So I'd like to introduce Paul, the author of this entry, to tell us a bit more about it.
And he's coming to us from Singapore today. So hello to all our friends in Singapore, including Bitcoin Association's Southeast Asia manager, Ella.
I see Ella typing away in the chat.
He's typing away in the chat.
Yeah.
We're all gonna, while we're waiting for Paul, we're can all do a Rihanna, Ella, A.
I'll leave that one to you, Jimmy.
Getting ready for my CoinGig dance. So.
Okay, looks like we've got Paul online.
Here I am. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now.
Paul, for a great intro.
Hey.
Okay,
let me share
turn
the
it over
screen.
to you.
Okay, can you see the slides?
We can.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to start. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. My name is Paul, and I'm the founder of MyPayMail. So I would like to thank everyone that contributed to the Bitcoin Hackathon for making it possible, and also for inviting me to do this talk during this webinar. So today I'm going to be presenting our new product called MyPayMailSend, and hopefully would be useful to know what it is. So I'm going to start with a little bit of our history about the MyPayMail platform, just to give you a bit of context. Then I'm going to move on to the origin of the idea, goals and challenges. And then I'm going to describe how the product works at a high level, followed by the demo. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So keep all your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the concept of Bitcoin addresses. So historically, we've been using Bitcoin addresses to send payments and to identify the recipient. But that's not the only way to do it. In fact, we have the payment protocol now, which gives you a string that looks like an email address that you can share with people, and then you can simply send payments, and it's much more user-friendly. So MyPaymail was born with the idea of providing new ways of sending and receiving payments and data. And we started with the PayMail protocol, providing services with PayMail protocol, because it's something that many wallets support, and it's very popular these days. So the first iteration of the product was released in April as a private beta. And the key feature was that you could create a payment handle, that you could change the destination wallet anytime. And also, if you own your own domain, you could create a handle using that domain. So since then, we've released other products, other features to extend the platform. And I won't go through all of them because it's not the topic of this presentation. But if you want to learn more, please go to our blog and you can find a description of all of them. So the latest addition to the MyPaymail platform is MyPayMailSend, which is our hackathon submission. And we are planning to release a public beta in October. So stay tuned for that. And now I'm going to be explaining what it is and what you can do with it. So before I explain what it is, let me give you a little bit of background of where the idea came from, because it's not obvious when you actually think about it. So as I said before, one of the features that we offer is if you have your own domain, you can create a payment using that domain. And that allows you to have an email address that matches your payment address or handle. So, but the thing is, to do that, you need to either host your own email server, or you can also buy these services provided by Google, such as G Suite or Outlook. But most people use free email address from providers that don't support the payment protocol. So many people will have a Gmail address or ProtonMail or Yahoo. So one of the issues we had is, can we actually use any email address? Because it's kind of confusing for some users. Sometimes they ask, oh, but is the payment the same as the email address? And it gets a bit confusing sometimes. So I had an interesting conversation with one of our early users, and we talked about using email addresses and how we could do it. And well, it's kind of difficult sometimes because the user always has to install something, some software, some browser extension, something, and there's always some friction to that process. So there's many apps today, and users have lots of apps, and everyone wants to claim attention from the users to install another app. So the idea kind of got archived for a while. But one day, had an idea that I thought it could be viable as a product. Decided to prototype it and give it a go. And basically, I had some self-imposed goals. So, which basically, if I want to use an email address to receive Bitcoin payments, I need to be able to use any email address so the users don't get confused. And ideally, you want the sender to not have to create an account or log in. So you just want a very simple process where someone goes into a website, just send a payment. And ideally, you want the recipient to not have to do anything. You just want to be able to have an email address, and you just meet someone and you say, can I send you a payment? And you can just send the payment. And there's no reason not to accept it because there's nothing that the receiver needs to do. And it would be nice if the sender could actually have an expiry date and time, so you can claim back the payment if the recipient doesn't claim it in some date. But that's optional, but it's nice to have. Okay, so it was kind of challenging at the beginning because we are not a custodian, like many other BSV businesses, such as Moneybutton or Handcash. And we don't want to be one because it requires some licenses, and you need to be careful with the amounts. So our solution had to be non-custodial to start with, and we had to make sure that only the recipient can actually redeem the payment, which is not super obvious at the beginning. And most importantly, what if the recipient doesn't know anything about Bitcoin? So how do we address this? And the approach we've taken is interesting because our only innovation is to delay the installation or learning of any Bitcoin software until you actually have the funds. So what that does is it changes the incentive because you will receive the money first. And then once you have the money, you need to learn about Bitcoin because you want to use that money that you might have in your email inbox. So normally the way it works is the recipient has to have an application that shows a Bitcoin address or a payment handle, and then you give that to the sender, and then the sender can make the payment. But what we've done is we swap that, and now the sender can just send the payment without the recipient doing any steps. So that's key to understand what we're doing, because the recipient will have to install an application at some point, some wallet or something that they can manage the funds, but they don't have to do it immediately. They can wait until they have some time to learn about it, or they want to move the funds for some reason. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to explain how this system works at a very high level. So there will be some details missing from these diagrams, but I think the idea is just to give you an overview and an idea of how all the pieces fit together. So Alice wants to send a payment to Bob, but as we know, Bob cannot generate anything because it doesn't have a wallet. So how are we going to send a payment? And also, we want to be non-custodial and provide a service at the same time. So we're going to start with Alice generating a private key locally. and it's going to encrypt the private key with a password. Now, we'll come back to the password later on, but for now, let's just have this idea that there's a key and it gets encrypted. Now, only with it, we need some other secret, because otherwise Alice will be able to spend any Bitcoin or anything that sends to Bob. So what we propose is we introduce MyPayMail in the middle. And what we're going to do is we're going to offer a service to Alice to send money to Bob. And we're going to see how in a minute. So we first send the encrypted key to MyPayMail. And the MyPayMail backend is going to generate an output for Bob, even though Bob is not registered with the platform or anything. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to create an output that can only be spent if you have the private key that Alice has generated, and you can sign with it, and another secret that is generated by the MyPayMail backend. So what happens is Alice will move the funds to this output by signing a transaction. And then our backend will broadcast the transaction to the network. So at this point, the funds have been moved to this output that we've generated. And neither Alice or MyPayMail can now move them, because MyPayMail doesn't know the private key because he only seen the encrypted key. At the same time, Alice cannot move the funds either because it doesn't know the secret that's been generated by the MyPayMail backend. So what remains is, how do we get to Bob? So the only thing we have is the email address of Bob. So what we do is we send an email to Bob, which contains this secret generated by the MyPayMail backend, which we call redeem code, and the encrypted key plus the transaction. So we actually send the whole transaction so they can use the outputs in the application. Now Bob has access to the encrypted key, but it cannot decrypt it. And we said at the beginning that Alice encrypted this key with a password. So what we're going to do is Alice is going to share this password, and this password is done in a certain way. So our application generates 5 random words. And that way, we don't have to share the whole private key. We just share this password, which is has enough strength and is generated in a user-friendly manner. So you just need to give it to Bob using private messaging or just meeting or by another means. So now Bob has access to the key to decrypt the encrypted key. So he goes ahead, decrypts the key, and then he finds the redeem code. And now Bob can spend the payment because he's the only one that has the 2 pieces of information. So what Bob needs to do, though, is needs to check that the payment is correct with the application that we supply, because otherwise you don't know if these 5 random words are correct. And then he can create a wallet at any time, as long as he keeps the email and these 5 random words. And it can redeem the payment after he's created the wallet or if already has one. So that's roughly how it works at a very high level. So we're going to see a demo now, which you'll see that most of this is hidden from the user perspective, and it should be easy enough to do. So let me switch to, I'll show you a demo. This is what you more or less can expect. It's not finalized yet. There will be changes, but for now, let's show you this. So you're going to land in a page, and it's going to be very simple. So you're going to see, just put the amount. So it's going to send 1 cent. And I got 2 emails here that I've just set up for the demo, so that you can see what you'll get. So the first step is very simple, just the destination email. So MyPayMail and you have to provide the email of the sender because we're gonna send some receipts to you. So and email.com. So it can be any email really. And we have a feature that we're not going to have a lot of time to go through, but you can set an expiration date for the payment. So what that does is it makes sure that after that date, you can the sender can claim back the funds, but that's optional. So you can, but we're going to select it just for you to see how it works a bit, or what you get as an email. So I think my time zone is a little bit difficult at the moment. So let's see, 11 p.m. Now you have to accept. So let's double check my payment tech and my payment sent. Should fine. So you just click send, and right at the moment only works with money button, but it will work with other wallets. That's not too difficult to do. So we just pay. So we just swipe, and now we are basically sending the funds. There you go. So we made the payment. So there's an explanation of how it works. It's not too bad. So it's effectively the payment unlocking code is what we talked about, which is effectively the password. And in this case, we've selected an expiration date, so we can see here. So and if you actually look at this, these are the 5 words that you have to share with your recipient. So we also give you some paymail reference, just so that if there's a problem, you can contact us and we know quickly what's happening. And then you have to say that you've written down your payment details. Otherwise, it will be keep here, but it's good so that you can clean the session and all this data is wiped out. So let's see, we've received something. Okay. Okay, there you go. So we got 2 emails. So the first one, it says, oh, you've received a new payment. So this is someone that never seen Bitcoin before. So, okay, well, what is this? And then it's a little bit weird because I had a previous email that I had to erase. But what you're getting is it explains what it is. So it says, well, we received 1 cent. It's been calculated with this exchange rate. And it gives you a little bit of explanation of how to get a wallet, and then how to get how to check your unlocking code. So if you don't want to redeem the payment yet, that's fine, but you still need to check that your unlocking code is good. So the other email that we received is basically saying that your payment has been sent. So this is kind of like a confirmation. It gives you some detail of what we've done. And then it tells you that you can reclaim this payment after this date with this link. So as long as you hold these 5 words, that's fine. You can do it anytime. These 5 words make our system non-custodial. So there's always something on the user side that we don't have access to, and we cannot really move your funds. But we facilitated the payment. And now we're going to see what happens to redeem the payment. So you click redeem payment, and then you're going to go to a page that would ask you, oh, can you give me your unlocking code? And then you just type the unlocking code. Second, record. See what happens. So these are the 5 words that I had before. So now it says your unlocking code is correct, so that's good. That's all good. So as long as you know that the unlocking code is correct, you can know it shows a money button because I already have an account. I'm logged in. But if the customer doesn't have a money button, it will have to create one. Over time, we will expand this page a lot more to contain other wallets and much more in detail explanation to know what to do. But for now, we'll just try that. So we are redeeming the payment. So now all is happening is we're using the 2 inputs that we have to transfer all the funds to the money button account. And there you go. So we have the payment now. So that's pretty much how it works. There's no much to it. It's simple. You just need to put the email destination, send the payment, and it gets to your inbox. and you can leave it in your inbox, and you can send as many as you like and leave them there. So it will tell you the amount. And that's what I have for you today before the Q&A. So thank you for listening. And you want to contact us, please you can use Twitter or Twitch, and you can also use info@trusted.com. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I think the Q&A has been enabled. So if you've got some questions, please drop them in, and I will pass them on. Oh, here we go. Always fun with a new platform. I'll actually kick off with a couple of questions of my own, and one that I actually saw in the chat. I'll start with that one actually. So what happens if a user who gets the email never actually follows through with the process and accepts the payment? Is there a timeout mechanism? I think you did mention one.
So if the user, so there's two modes basically. So one is the sender explicitly says, I want this payment to expire by that date. In that case, what happens is you will get a partially signed transaction as a sender. So it's kind of a little bit technical, but effectively what that does is allows the sender to go into the page at that date and then claim the funds. So they will get it back to the original address. But if you don't do that, then it gets to the recipient, and then the sender will never be able to do it unless we verify that there's a problem. We take it back. But there's so the only way you know is if you go into the link will say not found. So if someone has essentially spent the payment. Yeah.
Okay. I've got another question here from Ben Skelton, which it's an interesting one. It's do you think that it looks potentially like scammy in the inbox of a receiver? That's kind of a perception thing. People are probably quite used to getting emails saying, "Hey, you've got some free money." How would you go about?
Yeah, so the thing is, in this case, because you have to get these 5 words, obviously it's not an unexpected email. It's something that you need to look for, because you need to verify that these words that the sender is giving you are correct. So if you haven't seen this email, so the sender will tell you, I've sent you a payment, and you need to be waiting for that. And if you don't see the payment, obviously, if you make a payment, you're not gonna release the goods until you really see that. So in that case, if you don't see it, because something happened, you can contact us and we will address this. But it's possible, but it's the nature of email.
Okay. I can actually see a way that merchants might use a mechanism like this, because it's cheaper for them to accept BSV-based payments, or even payments in a BSV-based token, than it is to use traditional means. So I could imagine, a web store, for example, that says if you pay by cash this time, we'll send you a MyPayMailSend rebate in BSV. So I think it's a fantastic potential.
There are a lot of things such as invoices, and you can potentially reuse these 5 words for multiple payments at the same time. So these are features that you can expand on, which would potentially make it even more useful.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a few more questions here. I'm just going to take one more, because time's starting to get away from us, and if we have time at the end, we'll come back with more of those questions. The question is there a danger of confusing the user with multiple wallets to choose from? Is it better to just use one, whichever is the easiest for onboarding?
Yes, it's an interesting one. it's true. Currently, we're gonna release with money button only, but it's something. It's difficult to say because we haven't really designed the page where you redeem the payment. So hopefully, we can try not too many options, but like start with one, and then try to see what happens with another one. And all of them are going to be, I mean, money button is or relay X are easy because they're just a button, so you can swipe it and we know the paymail destination, so the user doesn't have to type anything. So that's how we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I think we're gonna find out. We're gonna start with one though, so hopefully it won't be. We don't want to introduce too many things at the same time. Sure.
Fair enough. It's always good to ease the users into it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for presenting the entry. It was definitely one that stood out to me, and I think it's a fantastic way to address the onboarding issue. I think we're ready to jump across to the next presenter, but stick around because we might try to get some more of the questions to you at the end. And best of luck with the whole PayMailSend proposition. I think I spotted it when you first announced the project quite some months ago, and I was really glad to see someone actually taking PayMail hosting as a service.
Yeah, that's the business model is actually hosting. We have new surprises for that, so stay tuned during the CoinGeek conference. That's all I'm going to say. So
look forward to hearing more. So our next entry is going to be presented by Tim, and it's called ProfitSilo. And this one really stood out because it very directly addresses the theme of the hackathon, which is interoperability, connecting the world to one global blockchain. And it's all about being able to essentially monetize data, tag data, monetize data, etc. I won't go into too much detail. I'll let Tim take you through it, but I'm not sure if we're quite ready yet. Okay, I hear Tim is connecting right now. Yeah, so this is a bit different to some of the things that you might normally see. It's more of a CLI based tool. So it doesn't have the kind of pretty front end, but many of you out there, I think, are developers are probably pretty comfortable with this sort of thing.
Well, we're waiting for him. You want to give us a hint of anything you're going to be talking about at CoinGeek Live, Steve?
No.
No.
Well,
it's talking about Bitcoin,
built on
right?
top
You're talking about Bitcoin. It's
more stuff built on top of Bitcoin SV and additional features for the merchant API and solutions to the general problem of users interacting with the blockchain, because we're really trying to encourage the model where users can be users and Bitcoin miners can be Bitcoin miners, and they shouldn't need to use the same tools and they shouldn't need to run things that aren't really necessary to how they want to make use of Bitcoin. But Tim, we have
Tim. All right, so we're excited to hear about all that infrastructure excitement from Steve at CoinGeek Live. But
I'll do my best to make infrastructure sound exciting. All right, Steve.
Bitcoin SV world makes infrastructure sexy.
Definitely.
You heard
all
it
right,
from me.
Tim, do you want to tell us about ProfitSilo?
Hi, sorry. Hi, so my name's Tim from Brisbane, and ProfitSilo is my hackathon project, and it's basically about selling data for Bitcoin micropayments. And share my screen.
Tim, I'm not sure if your audio is working. I can't hear you, and I'm hearing a couple of other people saying the same.
Oh, and now we're seeing our Hangouts. You can see our Hangouts on the screen. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Can you make sure you're not sharing?
I'm not. No, it's him. He's flipped screens. Apologies, guys. We've got a couple of technical difficulties here. Okay, I think while we're figuring this out, I'll do a little bit of ad-libbing here and give Tim a chance to figure out what the technical difficulties are. Okay, so well, let me tell you more about how the Bitcoin SV node changes yesterday. So I did publish an article about the free consolidation transactions. That's on the bitcoinsv.io website. Tim, if you've got your audio, let me know and I'll shut up and let you. Yeah.
Are you able to hear this?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think it's working now. Sorry.
It's working? Okay, I'll be quiet and let you take it away.
Okay. So, I'm sharing the screen. So, this is Greg Satel's article. He's basically just saying that the silos are for a good reason. It's just because they're organized around the functional, what's best. People who know the same stuff can work together better. And breaking down the silos is about the management style. And this one is by Michael Crawford Urban from Malware Research. And they did some case studies on similar problems. And their conclusions were that the main things are the uneven distribution of costs, data privacy concerns, the lack of technical solutions, and they just don't know how to collaborate across silos. So there's the three things, which are governance, people, and data or technology. And there was the case studies they went into. One of them was like a legal solution. So it was just the government said they had to only store everything once. And in the UK, they had professional specialisms, which is like people forming skills groups to join the silos together, which is a people skills solution. And New Zealand had the data exchange, which is technical solution. So this is from their paper. These are the things that impact data silos. So I put the data into named ordered lists, and then you have to pay to access those lists of data. And the messages are signed by the people that send the messages. And when you make a payment, that's like putting an on-chain timestamp of the data, and the server signs that hash to put into the op return data. So this is enabling people to check the integrity of the data. So they want to know, did I get the data that I wanted to buy? I bought this data 5 years ago. Has anyone changed the data since I bought this data? Or did other people buy the same data as me? So using the on-chain hashes, they can check all these things. So the system architecture is here. So this is a client. This could be a wallet or some kind of information system like a web form. It will sign JSON messages, which could have some data or a transaction ID or something, and put that into ProfitSilo. And then some other system will have to make a payment before they can download those messages. And when they've made the payment, the server is signing the data and putting a timestamp on the chain. So the database is PostgreSQL, and it's a Node.js app. The signed JSON messages are sent over HTTP multi-part form data. Command line wallet included is also written in Node.js. So here's an example use case I came up with. So these could be government departments or just business departments, anything like that. So Department A has 5 terabytes of data, and Department B wants to correlate this data to improve something. Problem is, Department B cannot copy and store this data. There's too much data. They only have 1 terabyte of storage max. And Department B does not understand this data. They cannot query the data because they don't know anything about the data. The data might contain personally identifiable information or other sensitive data. So they don't get the whole data. They just get the stuff that they need for their use case. And there's other things like privacy laws, data residency, and data sovereignty, which relates to where data could be stored. But Department A's IT staff can do this query. And how do they get the results? Are they going to email the results? Well, it's not very secure. Can't verify anything. But the Department A's IT staff will need to do overtime to do the querying, filtering, and aggregating of all this data. So they don't want to do it. But Department B can fund it now because of the improvements they got from the data. And Department B wants to get updates on this every week. So Department A will set up automated tasks to run these queries weekly and publish it to ProfitSilo. They can do it in the format that Department B wants because Department B is paying them for it. Department B will set up automated tasks to buy this data and import it into their system. The nearby university also wants this data, so they could buy it too. And another idea I had in this project was to use a custom script to do a file release. So this is where multiple customers pay at the same time to release a file with the hash. And this goes back to the once only principle they had in the Estonia case, because all the files are there by hash. So you know if it's there already. And one of the motivations behind this is that, like, once you've released a file, everyone can just give each other the file and they don't need to pay you for it anymore. So if you make everyone pay for it before you give it to them, then you get more money for the same file, maybe. So there's my contact, or if you want to help with this project. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Tim.
Do you have any questions?
Good example of, I guess there's a, sometimes it's been a debate, but usually a discussion about on-chain versus off-chain data. And we refer to the idea of putting hashes of data on-chain internally in nChain as notarization. So, Tim, I'm curious, why did you go down that road of notarizing data as hashes rather than dumping like full blobs of data on the blockchain itself?
Well, that's something you can do. So you can put the transaction IDs into the JSON messages. So I could do that. I've already written some code before to put stuff on chain.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to include it in the whole application. Like, I just started with something that I knew how to do.
There's only so much that you can do in an 8-week hackathon, of course. Tim, I didn't realize that you were from Brisbane. I actually used to work at the Royal Brisbane Hospital, and the demo, the example use case that you gave is precisely a problem that I actually used to have to work on in that particular role. So I certainly think that there's a market for what you're trying to do. I didn't actually see the command line interface in the presentation, though. But what I did see in the demonstration videos, etc., that you submitted, it was a really slick interface with. I mean, yeah, it was all text, but you know, everything was presented nicely in tables, etc. Did you use some kind of shell framework or something to help with that, or?
The command line interface was just Node.js. There's the commander module. I think there's the tables is console.table function.
Okay, I'm not sure how publicly available the entry actually is at the moment, but when it does become public, I would encourage people to go take a look at the way that the command line interface has been put together.
Yeah, it's on the GitHub. The videos, if you want to watch the videos, they're on GitHub. They
are? Okay, all right. We'll. I think that there's probably links to that on the Hackathon website, but we'll make sure that some links pop up for that. So how long have you been working with Bitcoin, Tim?
So probably I haven't done any actual development on Bitcoin before Bitcoin SV came out. So it must a couple of years maybe of actual programming. But I read a lot about Bitcoin before that.
Yep. And are there any other projects that you've done that we might have heard of?
Oh, you probably wouldn't have heard of them, no. I had another project which was static websites. So using the money button to pay to access a static website.
Yep. Okay.
Which is Memodat. There's a link to that on the GitHub too if anyone's interested.
Okay, we'll make sure that we get a link to your GitHub dropped in the chat at some point before the end of this. I've got a question from David Foderick asking, does the ProfitSilo system enable, no, we've got the wrong question showing up. He's basically asking, can data be anonymized? It says remove PII. I'm not quite sure what that means. P2?
PII is personally identifiable information.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So, I mean, yeah, you can anonymize the data, but you would anonymize it and then sell it. So you'd give them just the stuff that they wanted, like the outputs that they wanted, because they don't understand like all of the data.
Yeah. All right. One thing I think that stuck out to me in the entry in your submission was every person who submitted to the hackathon had to answer a series of questions, and one of them was to tell us more about what you learned in the course of the hackathon. And I recall yours is actually quite an extensive list. It looked like you had to pick up a lot of things that you may not have worked on before. Could you tell us a bit about the learning curve that you had to go through during the 8 weeks?
Oh yeah, it was the difficult parts were writing a custom script, getting the custom script working, and putting that into the command line. Because I hadn't really written scripts before, like Forth scripts. I haven't written Forth scripts, and writing the command line wallet, I hadn't done anything to do with UTXO's management. All the stuff I'd done before that was like just using the Unwriters stuff to upload files and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Writing scripts and debugging scripts has been pretty challenging up until now. Only in the last few weeks, really, I think, have some tools come out. I'm talking about native scripts as opposed to something like script. Only in the last few weeks have some tools sort of come out that enable you to sort of run scripts step by step, etc. So that's I can imagine what a learning curve that was. And for anyone who's interested, there's a GitHub link has just been dropped into the chat, so that you can take a further look.
Someone's asking for collaboration.
Someone is also asking for your email address for future collaboration. So we might just grab the contact details of both of you, and we can put you in touch privately. I probably won't publish your email address unless you want to. Otherwise, I'm sure you can contact him through GitHub. There's a
just should be able to find it through GitHub. So,
yep, excellent. All right, well, thank you very much, Tim. I'm glad you put in the entry. I do encourage people to take a look at it. As I say, being a command line tool, it's got a bit of a different flavor to a lot of the other entries, but I think it's got a lot of potential. If you're someone out there who's more on the business side and think that you might have a way to market it, and get in touch with Tim. We do have another question's popped up. Can a third party buy and sell data using this?
Third party. So you can just set it up to, like, I would imagine that there'd be like permissions things. So you could set up some so that it's like public access, so anyone could buy it, or you could set it up so that only certain keys can access that.
I think this is a more specific version of a general question, actually, which would be, how do you have a future plan for the ProfitSilo project? Are there additional features or anything that you think that you could add to it to give it more utility?
Yeah, definitely. I think it needs like a web admin interface, like so someone can go in and check things and like the traffic and stuff. I guess maybe more of an interface, like a public interface, for people to check what's actually available. So you could have a look and see, oh, this person has this data. They have different sorts of things on sale. So like a shop front for data.
Yep. I can imagine there's also room there for indexing services and a full-scale marketplace even. This seems very much like it's the building blocks of something that could turn into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do we have another question? No. Okay. All right. So I think we'll probably move on now because time is getting away from us. If there are any other questions for Tim or for Paul or for me or even for Jimmy, feel free to drop them in the chat over the next few minutes, and we might try to see if we can get to some. So this is just the first in a series of these presentations of some of the hackathon entries. There's some other really impressive stuff out there as well. I would encourage you to go take a look at it. Hackathons have typically been times where ideas are born, potentially businesses are made, relationships and partnerships often get forged in the midst of these. And anybody who doesn't make it into the finals this time, keep on trying, because some of the people that I've seen who look like they may have even started quite recently certainly are showing the potential to be future finalists and future winners. So in the absence of any further questions, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Jimmy Nguyen.
Let's thank Tim for his work. Thank you, Tim. So now we're going to Steve, if anyone has any, with respect to the releases that came out from the Bitcoin SV node team yesterday, which was version 1.0.5 of the Bitcoin SV node software, with a number of significant advancements to prepare the road to massive scaling even better. And Steve wrote in a blog post on coinsv.io site to enable the rise of nano services, not even microservices and micropayments, nano services. And I'll take this moment to clarify the bitcoinsv.io site going forward. We launched that site before the hash war that led to the split of BCH and BSV as a site for the node software implementation. It's now becoming a site for all of the technical infrastructure work, announcements, and news from the Bitcoin SV node team. BitcoinSV.com was launched last year to be the general portal site for a more mainstream audience to learn about Bitcoin SV. So that's where you send your friends, business contacts to learn the basics of Bitcoin SV. For all the technical information, go to bitcoinsv.io. And in addition to the node software release, there was also an updated release of what was formerly known as the Merchant API, now known as just MAPI. And both have very significant developments for what's going to happen in the future of Bitcoin SV. So Steve, if anyone has questions about any of those two things, pop them into Q&A mode. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Steve a couple of questions of my own. Steve, so if you could describe in a nutshell for business people out there who are less familiar with obviously the details of Bitcoin SV infrastructure, what's going to be the biggest impact for them of this node release yesterday, version 1.0.5? What will allow businesses and the developers working for them to do that they could not do before?
Well, it will impact different people in different ways. One thing I haven't really elaborated on yet is some of the scaling benefits of some of the changes in the mining specific parts of the Bitcoin SV node software. But I'll have more to say about that later, because we want to talk about a business right now. The concept of a nano service is something that is, of course, tiny and incremental, that you may want to purchase as a one-off. This is slightly different to the concept of a payment channel, which, although Satoshi didn't use the term nano payment or nano services, that is basically what a payment channel does enable. But it's a payment channel is between two parties with the repeated and incremental use of a particular service. A consolidation transaction allows just a one-shot use of a service, and it has a requirement that you're piggybacking off an existing transaction, but that transaction doesn't necessarily need to even be related to the nano service that you're purchasing. So it could be something as small as a single frame of a video. It could be tiny incrementally small pieces of data, a few bytes at a time, to slowly put together fragments of a key or something. I'm just making things up off the top of my head.
But those examples you just gave, which is a frame of video, right? So we're getting down to this granular level about being able to monetize a single frame of video that someone would pay to view or pay to access.
Yeah, and I think probably an even better example would be micro calculations, and it's a very Bitcoiny example, but it does kind of paint the picture. We talk about SPV, and whenever we talk about SPV, we talk about Merkle proofs, and that is a little piece of data that allows you to connect a transaction to the chain of block headers. Now, there's a cost for generating that and providing that, and it's a little bit of disk space, a little bit of CPU, a few CPU cycles, and a little bit of memory. But the cost of that is tiny. It's so small that you would probably never bother to charge a person for it if it was a one-off thing. But if you're a miner or some other type of service that provides Merkle proofs as a service, and you're providing millions of these things per second, then those costs start to add up. And all of a sudden, you have a business model, because if I can charge you 1,000th or even 1,000,000th of a cent for this thing, and that's twice as much as it costs me in terms of running CPUs and hard disks, etc. Well, now I've got a business model. So a Bitcoin Merkle proof is a really nice example, because it's almost always associated with with a transaction itself. So it allows you to pick and choose who your service provider for a Merkle proof is going to be, or who you want to buy double spend insurance from, or who you might want to get some other kind of insurance from for any type of transaction or thing, just so long as you piggyback it off an existing transaction.
So there was a lot of really great and interesting social media reaction to the announcement of the release yesterday. I think Dean Little from the BitPing team called it a game changer. Did you expect people to react to it being a game changer?
I felt like it potentially was a game changer in the sense that it enables new ways of using Bitcoin. I think I expected it to take a while for it to sink in, what those ways might be. But yeah, I felt myself that it's a potential game changer, in the same way that payment channels, which we've always had around as a possibility, are a game changer. But it may well be that that this particular feature actually paves the way for some of the infrastructure that makes payment channels themselves even easier, more viable, and easier to implement.
Got it. So let's take a moment to try and break down more specifically a couple of the key developments or feature advancements in Node software. You want to tell us the most important ones and how it enables this world of nano payments?
Well, the most important one is the capability to accept a free consolidation transaction. And a consolidation transaction is one that's made up of many inputs that is consolidating all of that value into a single output. And it has a net benefit for the miner, because they're basically, you're removing many of these inputs from their database that they have to pay to maintain, and replacing it with this single output that they have to maintain as part of their view of the Bitcoin ledger. So being a net benefit to them, it's already making the money or saving the money rather. So it makes it possible for them to offer that as essentially a free service. And we initially thought about it in terms of being able to clean up dust transactions, but the Bitcoin SV team really doesn't like the concept of dust. It's just another mechanism for restricting what you can do with Bitcoin. And it was there originally to try and protect users from making a particular mistake, but that mistake no longer has the same consequence that it does in the BTC paradigm. With the capability of these consolidating transactions, dust no longer has any meaning. So you can use amounts as small or as large as you want, including which may come as a surprise to some people, including outputs that actually have 0 Satoshis. That's slightly different to what we might be used to, because op return outputs typically are 0 value, but they're unspendable outputs. The original Satoshi code allowed spendable outputs with a value of 0 Satoshis attached to them, which has
so that's what we would call a 0 value. Right, a 0 value transaction. Is that what you call that?
Yeah, actually, I used that term myself on Twitter just yesterday, and then I corrected myself. It's not correct to say 0 value; it's 0 Satoshis, because I think it's important to remember that value in a Bitcoin transaction can be carried in a lot of different ways.
Right.
It can be carried in the data itself. So even though there may not be any Satoshis attached to it, the data might be op return style data that has an unlocking script for a token system or something layered on top of Bitcoin in it, which may well have real world value.
Right. So the data in the transaction might have immense value, even though it costs 0 Satoshis to send it.
Yes, and it has the important implication that the number of UTXOs in the Bitcoin system is not actually bounded by the number of Satoshis in the Bitcoin system. It tends toward infinite, not quite infinite, because there is actually still a cost to creating these outputs. So you would never do it unless there was real value in the output. It doesn't constrain that value to being expressed in Satoshis.
Okay. Well, I, for one, am going to be very interested to see how the Bitcoin SV developers out there come up with creative and powerful new uses of the capabilities enabled by yesterday's release.
So am I. The part that I love about this job is that I don't actually have to think of all of these things. As long as we can unlock things and remove the barriers to other people being innovative, then to some extent I can just sit back and watch what other people create, which
yeah, you and team help lay and build a really powerful foundation, and everyone else gets to come build great things on top of it. Yeah. So let's talk about.
Please build. It makes me happy to see people building.
Yes, as I like to say, it's time to build. What will you build? And when I'm not talking to Steve, he's building plenty of things for infrastructure for everyone else to get the benefit and build upon. So let's talk about Mappy, because that's another great piece of infrastructure. Why don't you tell the audience what Mappy is generally, and then what is the impact of yesterday's update?
So Mappy, formerly known as Merchant API, arguable it could have been called Miner API, but there was already another one. So we finally resolved to settle on the name API. It's basically a public point of presence for a miner, and it's the point where users of the Bitcoin network who deal with each other peer-to-peer can interact with the core of the network, which is the miners. That was previously done using the peer-to-peer protocol itself, and it can still be done, and that's probably always going to be the case. But end user application developers, they're very familiar with REST APIs. It's easy to get up and running in a few minutes to be able to contact a miner and get a quote for a fee from them, or send them a transaction and get a definitive response, as opposed to trying to code up a Bitcoin peer-to-peer client, which is got a raft of complexities that will probably get more complex over time because of all of the changes to the protocol that have to be sort of slowly unpicked or adjusted in the future. So yeah, it really represents a miner's public point of presence, because miners are actually service providers, and I think that they are interested in acting that way. If you were running a shop, you wouldn't hide where your shop was. You want customers to be able to find you. So these are the fundamental services that it provides. Is the ability to query transaction fees, which allows miners then to start adjusting them much more rapidly in real time, and submit transactions. But there's a few more features coming to Merchant API, which some of which I'll be showing off at CoinGeek in a few weeks' time.
Great. So it's fundamentally a technical tool to allow generators of high volumes of transactions, with applications, businesses, to interact more dynamically with miners on fee pricing and other features.
I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be users of high volume transactions. In fact, until this 1.1 release, they were at somewhat of a disadvantage because the Merchant API only had the ability to accept one transaction at a time. Now, if you're an application like WeatherSV or MetaStream that deals in high volumes of applications, that creates a bit of a problem, because if, for example, you have 500 milliseconds latency to send a REST request back and get a response back, multiply that by 1,000 transactions, and you're up to a pretty significant amount of time. I can't do the maths off the top of my head, but it's probably in the minutes. So one of the features of 1.1 is batch submission, which allows you to compress all of that into a single round trip. And so that probably won't make a lot of difference to an end user wallet, but for high volume data applications, that will make an enormous difference.
Okay, great. Audience, if you have any questions, type them into the Q&A mode. If you've got any, I see someone named David Wilson is typing now. We're happy to take some questions from the audience. If anyone has anything, we're probably still absorbing the news and information about the Bitcoin SV node version 1.0.5 and maybe MAPI 1.01. So I'll wait a bit for anyone to have any questions. After this, I'm going to bring on our Southeast Asia manager from Bitcoin Association, who is, of course, in the APAC region, Ella Chang, and she'll come say hi and give us a little update on some things she's been working on behind the scenes. Ramon Casada says, great work, Steve. So yay, let's all take this moment to give a round of applause to Steve, Daniel Connolly, and Bitcoin SV node team for everything they do to really lay down a great infrastructure for the entire ecosystem's benefit.
They're quiet and tireless workers, and we're up to 50 of them now working on
50. There's
so yeah, I do try to take any chance I get to thank them, because most people don't know who they are, and they never really ask for any kind of acknowledgement, but they do amazing work behind the scenes.
It takes a village, and you're growing a big village. So yeah, thank you, Node team, the 50 unseen, unsung people and growing that help keep this all afloat. And Liz Lee just typed, great work for Steve and all the Node team. That's our China manager, Bitcoin Association, who's been having a very busy couple of days. We have happening soon this weekend, the second DOT camp for BSV, hosted by our China ambassador, Lin Jiming, who is the founder of Mempool, a BSV and Bitcoin mining pool in China, as well as Dot Wallet, a super popular BSV wallet out in China. So go, Lin, and hi, Liz. Thank you for all the traveling and crazy work you've been doing to get ready for lots of things. All right, there is a question from Stefan February. Any idea if the mapping will support WebSockets or webhooks in the future? Any idea if mapping WebSockets or webhooks in the future?
I can't see a reason why not. I mean, it's not directly in our plans, but we have a number of features I think that we want to make part of the mapping and get widely deployed first. But if there's actually a need for it, certainly we are trying to kind of move towards widely adopted technologies in general Bitcoin infrastructure. There's absolutely no need for us to go inventing new wire protocols for everything we do. We have gRPC, we have protobufs, we have any number of standardized interfaces that enable devs to get up and running quickly. So if there's a use case for it, by all means tell us what you think it is, and we'll take it into consideration and see if we can add it to the roadmap. The beautiful thing about MAPI though is it's not up to us. We're simply implementing things that seem to make sense for us as a service for miners to operate. But if miners think that there's a different or a better way, then we separated those services out from the Bitcoin SV node to make it easier for miners to do their own development.
Great. Well, I'm waiting to see if anyone else is asking questions. Yeah, I want to raise a point, which is, I know you're working on even more feature advancements for the node software and infrastructure that you're not going to tip your hand now, but I think, we can tell the world listening out there that, what happened with yesterday's release is just the start, right, of even more to come. Yeah,
there's a lot of groundwork I think that has to be done for a lot of changes that tends to sort of sit and it's invisible, I suppose, to the end user, but it's the stuff that has to come before the stuff that is visible, and we've got quite a few things where that background work has happened now, so we get to pick the fruit off the tree, so to speak.
Yeah, how long has yesterday's release and its features been in the works?
Some of them since the beginning of this year. Not all of them, but yeah, definitely some of them. Some of them have been planned for well over a year, probably some even close to 2. It was just a matter of finding the right spot in the roadmap to slot them in, and making sure all of the dependence work had been done in time. Sometimes I get frustrated because I want things to happen now, and like I say, some things that we're delivering just now were ideas 2 years ago, and there's ideas today that probably won't come for another year. But this is just the way that you have to do it in engineering, unless you want to take risky shortcuts, which just isn't an option with a piece of infrastructure like Bitcoin SV node.
Yeah. So to those people who have wondered this year out loud, including on social media, well, what exactly is nChain doing? What have they been working on? Are things moving fast enough in the ecosystem? What would you say?
Well, we're working on a lot of our own stuff as well, which we made a conscious decision not to talk about until we kind of reach a level of readiness. I would like to unveil some of the stuff that we're doing and finish that unveiling with a comment like, and here's a link where you can sign up and start using it right away. So yeah, we certainly have some big things in the pipeline on the commercial side for nChain, but we'll unveil that with appropriate fanfare at the time. But yes, we continue with a lot of infrastructure based work for the Bitcoin Association. I spotted a question there from Stephen February.
Before you take the question, let me add to that point. Bitcoin SV community, there's a huge amount of work happening behind the scenes, not just at nChain, but by many, many companies across the world, some of whom will unveil themselves and talk about things at CoinGeek Live. I think you'll be excited about a lot that is coming. But I want to urge people to be realistic and patient about what it takes to build a real technology ecosystem, not toy tokens, not just things that are designed to pump up a price quickly so someone can take a token and leave. We're talking about building a real technology infrastructure that will stand the test of time and that will enable immensely powerful applications, even at the mass enterprise level. And that takes time to do right, to do well, and that's exactly the path Steve at nChain and the Node team, as well as many other companies around the world, are taking. And I think you'll be happy with the results because we're building real things for real value. All right, the question you wanted to take, Steve.
It's another one from Steve in February. He asks the 0MQ interface of the Node software. Oh, it's not actually a question, it's a comment. The 0MQ interface of the Node software needs updating. Stefan or Stephen, I hear what you're saying, and all I could say is we put out 1.05 yesterday. There's a 1.06 and a 1.07 before the end of this year, and I think you'll be pleased with some of the inclusions in those.
Okay. With that, Steve, you want to hang on while I bring Ella on? So for those of you who have not met her, I'm sure you've seen her tweeting, and she just has been starting to speak at some events. We're going to bring on our Southeast Asia manager, Ella, when she gets a chance to join us in this room. She is based in Singapore, itching to get out and fly around the world again, like so many of us. But we really want to thank her for a lot of the work she's been doing behind the scenes, like many other of my team members at Bitcoin Association, doing work quietly behind the scenes, but having loud impact. Say hi, Ella.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Jamie, Steve.
Right. So Ella's responsibility is helping build the business and industry ecosystem for Southeast Asia as a geographic region. But she also has a broader role, which is we have a whole program within Bitcoin Association to do outreach to wallets, exchanges, and other service providers like custodians, blockchain analytics companies. And that's a huge amount of work, as you might imagine, given the breadth of the ecosystem globally. And Ella is the person I have tasked with leading, coordinating that. So she works with me and a lot of our other team members quite closely and has been busy. You've seen some of the results recently of a lot of her work, a number of exchanges and service providers announcing launch of BSV trading. So Ella, without giving away too much that we haven't announced, just generally, how are things going with the growth of the business and support ecosystem for BSV service providers?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely seen a lot of incoming requests from service providers, whether on the exchanges side or on custodian service providers, because of this organic growth of BSV and just in general more demands of Bitcoin SV, especially from the institutional side. So yeah, this is kind of not the core of what the Bitcoin SV ecosystem is focusing on, but it is a important part to support the businesses and people who are involved in the economy.
Correct. Yeah, because it's obviously we recognize having more on-ramps to BSV helps for consumers and users, helps the various applications and ventures that are building out there to be able to get users.
Yep, for sure. And then we've been quite focused on, getting more fiat on-ramps for Bitcoin SV, especially with, with the different geographic focuses, different fiat currencies. So I think that is very important for the businesses that are building on BSV, as a lot of them are interested and looking for, fiat on-ramp that allows customers to get access to BSV so that they can use those products.
Yeah, let's take a pause and talk about that a bit more, because I often get asked, as I'm sure you sometimes, or we see it on social media chatter, why isn't BSV on this exchange or that exchange? And obviously we have taken a prioritization approach about what are the exchanges we think are most important to target. And it's not as if crypto to crypto only exchanges are not relevant, they are, but why the focus on fiat to crypto exchanges and fiat on-ramps?
Yeah, well, for one, I think the overall digital asset exchange space are going to be regulated in the future, depending on the jurisdictions, but that's a overarching trend, in my opinion. So we probably will see more kind of crypto to crypto exchanges start to diminish in terms of the amount of the players out there. And then two, really, it's necessary to have the fiat world to blockchain digital asset bridge, because we have those businesses who are blockchain and Bitcoin native, and to allow them to onboard new customers, in the short to medium term, they would require that bridge.
Got it. No, and I think that hits the nail on the head. We have made a strategic choice to focus first and most importantly on getting more fiat on-ramps. Doesn't mean there aren't crypto exchanges that you and I are talking to and that want to add BSV, and we fully support that as well. But like all things in life, you got to pick your battles and prioritize what you think has the most beneficial impact for this ecosystem. Anything else you want to tell us about things you're working on without spoiling any news we may have planned?
Yeah, we on the exchange side, we're definitely have more plans on there will be more fiat options for businesses that operating on Bitcoin SV coming up soon. And then in terms of
today, there was just an announcement of Calvin investing in the parent corporation for blockchain intelligence group in Canada, Publico, that happened after their blockchain intelligence business added BSV support to their compliance suite. But as a result of that investment, BSV will be added to their Netcoins exchange in Canada, a Canadian exchange that will also have more fiat on-ramps. So another one to add to the mix. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah, that's great. And then in terms of the Southeast Asia regional development, as we were kind of in a particular time right now. So a lot of I'm doing a lot of canvassing work to identify and collaborate with key partners in different countries in Southeast Asia, particularly Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia. So yeah, so hopefully when the pandemic is over and we get back to normal, there will be more Bitcoin SV activities in those countries.
And how are you seeing the response from businesses and other people you're talking to when you're educating them about BSV?
Yeah, so I think there are different types of businesses, right? Usually my experience when the enterprises who have some knowledge regarding blockchain technologies, the current state is they kind of shy away from the public blockchain approach and more kind of just think private blockchain, private DLT is the solution. So I think this is a big educational part that we should focus on, and let them know that, hey, you can do this on public blockchain without giving away privacy, etc. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of education work that we will need to do on our side for sure. And then, but I think usually the smaller side of businesses are very interested and excited when we talk about, hey, you can put there's the data capacity on public blockchain. You can do micropayments on blockchain, and there's all kinds of innovative business models that you can realize on the Bitcoin SV blockchain as that you can't do on the current internet infrastructure, and that really opens their mind to really unbounded opportunities and got them interested in looking into how to realize those.
Sure. Stay on, because we're going to bring on Liz Lee, our other manager from one of our other big APAC regions, China. So Liz, join on while I ask Ella one more question, which is, what do you think all the people who are watching this, who are a lot of our BSV supporters around the world, what are things you think they can do to help the cause for advancement of Bitcoin SV adoption?
Yeah, I think I really see Bitcoin SV adoption would come outside of the current so-called cryptocurrency world. So, if you work at a company that you can identify some area, you think, Bitcoin SV can improve the current work or current infrastructure, you can probably start to educate, your colleagues or your team members on that. I think that's a really good start.
Great. Liz, why don't you come on, Ella, stay on with us while we talk to Liz. She's been having a very busy past few days in particular. I think she just sort of dropped off. I saw her getting ready to sign on. But for those of you who are in China, there is a second dot camp for BSV, as I mentioned, in Fuzhou City this weekend, September 19th and 20th. I think there's still opportunity to register for that, hosted by our China ambassador, Lin Jiming, founder of Mempool and Dot Wallet. Liz apparently is having issues connecting again. Sometimes happens with China, with internet connections. So if we can't have her join, I will send her regards to everyone and say, come to the dot camp this weekend if you're available in China, in Fuzhou City. We have had some great events recently for the Chinese audience, including the China Language DevCon, co-hosted with CSDN, the largest IT and software development community in China. So I think, Liz, let's give her one more chance to try and log on. If not, we're going to wrap up soon. And I will, meanwhile, tell people about our next one of these virtual meetups, which is going to be focused on the Americas time zone. It is going to be next week let me just confirm the date for everybody. It is on Thursday, September 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday, September 24th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Just a few days before we start the CoinGeek Live Conference, you'll hear from a couple of more of the shortlisted participants who submitted projects that rated well in the hackathon, and I'll give you some more updates about exciting announcements at CoinGeek Live. Now, here, out of the darkness, Liz Lee, our China manager.
Hey, Liz.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Are you in Beijing now?
No, I'm in Fuzhou now.
Yeah,
so I took a very early flight today, and now it's almost midnight in Fuzhou. But we are going to host the second dot camp with Dot Wallet this weekend. So I'm so excited for this event because this is our first on-site event after the coronavirus outbreak. So I think most developers and BSV supporters, they are also very looking forward to this event.
Got it. Can you give the audience just a quick overview of some of the kinds of topics and speakers that will be covered there?
Sure. So we are expecting over 120 guests this time, and half of them are developers who have experience in either blockchain or some other internet applications. But half of them are some startup companies and also some traditional enterprise. So we are trying to educate those enterprise and the small companies, and also some leading developers in those companies, the Bitcoin blockchain technology. So most of the topics are basically half the technical content and half the practical content. And I'm going to give a speech focusing on how the Bitcoin SV blockchain will empower your business. So it's a good time to educate those developers and also the companies and enterprises.
Great. And I know, you were a big advocate of doing this event to give our large China community some event to participate in this month when, the CoinGeek Live event is not quite convenient for their time zone, which we know it's definitely more focused on the Americas and Europe time zone. So we hope a lot of people get to dot camp too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then the other thing I wanted to talk with you both about before we wrap up is, you've been getting out to various events. Ella, I know you just spoke at the Virtual Islamic Finance Week.
FinTech.
FinTech Week, as well as Masumi Hamihara, who is our ambassador from Malaysia, but moving soon to Japan. And then Liz, I know you attended a event recently where you got invited to. You want to tell us, Ella, about your experience with the Islamic FinTech Week?
Oh, I'm sorry, but because the network doesn't work well here. But did you just ask about the conference I attended 2 weeks ago?
Yes. Why don't you tell us about that, Liz, and then we'll have Ella talk about Islamic FinTech Week.
Yeah, that conference was about like 300 people, and also most attendees are all like CTOs or CIOs from those traditional enterprises. So the first 2 days are most focusing about those some common technical concepts and some new areas of technology for traditional enterprises. And also the third day is on the fintech and the blockchain technology. So I can see most enterprises, they've already heard or already be interested in blockchain because in China, blockchain is quite a very like a hot topic, and also it's a cutting edge technology that is supported by the government. But most enterprises, especially those entrepreneurs I talk to, I can see that actually most of them don't know what blockchain technologies really can like help their business be better. So I think for me, I think we need to maybe run more like conferences or have more occasions to educate them, to provide some correct information to those enterprises.
Yeah, I agree. Ella, how's Islamic FinTech Week?
Yeah, it's a really good experience, especially it's an audience that at least for me, I didn't have the opportunity to communicate with that audience group in the past. And I personally learned a lot, especially from the Islamic finance concept, since a lot of financial products that they construct is very different from the traditional conventional finance. For example, they can't do loan because they can't really charge interest. So you need to have a lot of commodity to be backed into any transactions. So blockchain is really kind of perfect fit to solve these issues where you register each item, tokenize those commodities on chain, and you have a clear track of record of the whole transaction. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in that use case. And on my panel, we also particularly focused on impact finance and green sukuk, which is the Sharia compliant Islamic renewable energy bond. And that setup, the sukuk setup itself, also have very it's quite complicated in terms of the mechanism, which can be replicated using smart contract to streamline the process and makes information more transparent and efficient. So yeah, overall, I think it's a great experience. I have a lot of follow-up to do. So yeah, I would be interested in going back to these type of conferences, kind of more industry focused conferences more, since the audience there don't have too much deep knowledge of blockchain, but they're working in specific industries that have real business needs that I think we have the perfect solution for them.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because for those of you watching, that is a big part of the strategy we've chosen that I've directed our team to take, which is industry focus. Although Bitcoin SV and the blockchain can be used for everything in our view, we're picking particular industries and industry sectors where we think it'll have most impact, such as Ella mentioned, for the unique requirements of Islamic finance and going after those to push for education and hopefully some test projects that will be coming in the time periods to come. So I want to take this moment to thank Ella and Liz for all of their tireless work, much of which happens behind the scenes, some of which you see publicly and the effect of it you see publicly, but they are doing a great job as being leaders out in Asia, as well as global roles they play to build the Bitcoin SV ecosystem. So thank you, Ella and Liz.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, I'm going to bring this first of our virtual regional webinars to a close. Thank you for everyone who joined, and thanks to the representatives of MyPayMailSend and ProfitSilo for coming to speak and sharing their projects with the Bitcoin SV ecosystem. Thanks to Steve and Daniel Connolly and the Bitcoin SV Node team for their terrific work on the releases that came out for the Bitcoin SV Node software, as well as Mappy just yesterday. Join us again next week, Thursday, September 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next virtual meetup targeted to the Americas time zone. But anyone can watch from all over the world. We'll share more information about CoinGeek Live, as well as hear from some more of the shortlisted semifinalists for the third BSV Hackathon. And remember to register for CoinGeek Conference at coingeekconference.com. A lot's going to happen over those 3 days. I think you'll be very excited about some great things will be unveiled to really advance the future of building on Bitcoin SV. I'm Jimmy Nguyen, and thanks, and we'll see you again soon.